Screw it. Let's go nuclear. Welcome back to Satisfactory, a factory and automation game which will consume your life, in which there is no escape. So I've already beaten this game, for a second time. But there's one production line completely absent from this latest playthrough, and that is anything nuclear power related. The main reason being that once I discovered the nitro rocket fuel recipe, my rocket fuel power plants just carried me through the entire game. So considering I never once automated Ficsonium, what if I just go ahead and do just that? Hi there, can you help me automate Ficsonium Fuel Rods? Alright then, have a nice day. See you, bud. From raw uranium to Ficsonium Fuel Rods is going to be a hell of a build. Let's jump right into it. To do anything nuclear in this game, you're going to need to mine uranium. And in unrelated news, the Pope is Catholic. The game only has 5 uranium nodes in the entire map, and none of them are pure nodes. So let's go find them, eh? Too far from my base. Nope, still too far from my base. Too many spiders. Too many spiders. It's not even the right game. Wait, what was I doing again? So, not wanting to have to do a super hell dive on Ocean to get those nodes, I decided to use this in-peer node at the top of this mountain at the highest elevation in the game. I'm not going to be producing an absurd amount of power considering that, well, I already beat the game, but I am aiming for 5 Ficsonium Fuel Rods per minute. Let's get to mining this uranium and bringing it down to my factory. Now, I know what you're thinking. Was it necessary to build this spiral around a uranium node? Absolutely. This was just the most efficient way to extract the resource. As for the rest of this base, I'm going to be building an unhinged, brutalist megastructure that juts out of these various cliffs and mountains on the rocky desert. I'm going for that dystopic concrete hellscape, which I feel is just right for this build. While the uranium is building up, and some of the first buildings of my megastructure are being built, it's time for some actual automation. First step in this process is encased uranium cells, and this leads us to the first not-so-pro tip of my nuclear build. The alternative recipes are all goated. For almost every step, I'm going to abuse all recipes, mostly because they use less resources for greater output. In this particular case, let me ask you a question. Are you tired of liquid byproducts jamming up your entire system? Are you too lazy to package liquids just to sink them? What if you just not use those recipes at all? Our first alternative recipe, infused uranium cells, not only uses less uranium per cell, it also skips the need for automating sulfuric acid in a refinery and produces 0 sulfuric acid as byproduct. It's literally better in every single way. But we still need more materials for the other components, and that leads to my second not-so-pro tip. Keep your power production lines isolated from the rest of your other factory lines. Unless you're crunching your numbers in Excel spreadsheets, or just unbelievably confident in your math, keeping your resources and logistics networks separate from your power production makes it easier to keep track of how many resources you're using and troubleshoot in case something goes fuck up. You wouldn't believe how many times I jacked up my entire production lines this playthrough because I kept drawing too much from a single resource node. Except, I bet you would believe me, because I'm sure some of you dudes did the exact same thing. To get me that extra coal, iron, and limestone, I built a single rail pain train to go back and forth, dumping raw resources to be cooked up in these foundries. And so now that we got those encased uranium cells, this leads us to step 2. Uranium fuel rods. And once again, we are hitting up another goated alt recipe. The uranium fuel unit is absolute beauty. Uses less uranium cells to produce even more uranium fuel rods to burn in your nuclear power plants. It's as simple as less for more. To finish this recipe, I get to automating rotors, ever bullshit crystal oscillators, and electromagnetic control rods, which I have automated in this building over here, producing all the rods I'm going to need for every type of fuel rod. And with that, we are producing 2 uranium fuel rods per minute. 2 nuclear fuel rods sounds like absolutely nothing. That is enough to power 10 nuclear power plants, or 25,000 megawatts of power. But setting up nuclear power in Satisfactory is a project in itself. I set up a manifold system to get these rods fed into 2 lines of 5 nuclear power plants. That part is easy enough, but it's the water that will drown you in bullshit. Each power plant needs 240 water per minute, or 2 water extractors each. This can lead to some absolutely abominable pipe spaghetti, not helped by the fact that I have to extract water all the way down by the ocean down here. Trying to do my best to pump up this water and not end up recreating SCP-015, I use my absolute beloved stackable pipe supports to feed 2 power plants per pipe. That is the stuff of beauty, eh? But this leads to a big problem, a stinky, radioactive problem. Each nuclear power plant produces 10 uranium waste per minute, and if this backs up, the nuclear power plant shuts down. And while it's fun to make nuclear meltdown and HBO Chernobyl jokes, nothing explosive happens. The plant just turns off, which is how you can end up with a cascading power failure that can pretty much end a run. Either way, we must deal with it. The game gives you 2 routes. You can either build a massive storage facility or process it into the next fuel type, unless your name's Josh. In terms of storage, an industrial storage container is going to be your best bud, and this is where the blueprints come in handy. Slapping down 9 industrial storage containers rigged together makes for storing this trash way faster. Naming this blueprint after a certain social media site or your toxic ex is entirely optional, but always hilarious. Each stack holds 500 uranium waste, which gives each industrial storage container the capacity of 24,000 waste. This leads to not-so-pro tip number 3, how long to store waste. Here's some budget equation that I cooked up to see how long it will take for your nuclear storage to fill up. Building a big storage facility and forgetting about the waste is a valid strategy, but it's not that easy to forget, since it will always be that thing bugging you from behind your head. How much will this fill up? How close am I to just clogging up my entire storage? And to make matters worse, another unavoidable problem is the radiation. And if you don't have a massive stockpile of iodine filters, then get ready to have that radiation absolutely melt your face off. Some players opt to build their nuclear waste facilities far away from the main map, while other big brain players opt to integrate it into the local ecosystem. That choice is yours. And honestly, as long as you can get that radiation suit on, it really doesn't matter at this point. As long as you're okay with that Geiger counter going off like more beats per minute than a Dragon Force song. Turning the waste into plutonium fuel rods is a much spicier production line than uranium fuel rods. The first step requires you to use a blender to turn uranium waste into non-fissile uranium. And this leads to our most interesting alternative recipe. The fertile uranium alt produces much more non-fissile uranium per minute, but at the added cost of even more raw uranium. If you're a throughput enjoyer like I am, this recipe also turns that uranium waste input into an easy-to-use 25 per minute. But the real reason as to why you want to use this is because it will maximize the production of plutonium fuel rods, at the cost of how many uranium fuel rods you can produce. Either way, be free to argue about it in the comments section of this video. The next step is the first ult I'm going to actually skip. Rather than using instant plutonium cells, I'm just going to go take the long route. Fissile uranium requires nitric acid and more sulfuric acid and creates water as a byproduct. This is another situation where you can absolutely back up your entire system. So you gotta flush it out some way somehow. If you know what you're doing, you can reroute the water back into your system, produce some big thinking, and combine it with some limestone to get you that concrete you're gonna need for the next step. Speaking about that next step, once you get those particle accelerators pumping out plutonium pellets, your next step is gonna be to toss them in an assembler for encased plutonium cells. Here I set up 6 assemblers combining the pellets with concrete, but the concrete was taking way too long to fill up with the manifold, so I tore it all down and built a balancer system with 1 accelerator to 3 assemblers. But then I realized I forgot to connect the other particle accelerator before realizing I blocked myself in with the conveyor belt. And fuck me, I'm gonna need a break. Or another Monster Energy Ultra, which just straight up looks like these encased plutonium cells. Anyways, let's finish those fuel rods. I'm using the default recipe to automate plutonium fuel rods. Why?
It's cheaper.
The plutonium fuel unit is absolutely the better option, but I'm reaching the fuck it threshold and I'm not automating more radio control systems. To get these fuel rods cooking though, I need plutonium cells, which we just got online, electromagnetic control rods, which are just chilling right now, steel beams, which I have constructed on this platform down here, and lastly, heat sinks, which means I need aluminum, which means I can either tap into one of my pre-built production lines to get those aluminum products ready and risk accidentally screwing up the map since I lost track of how much I'm producing and where I'm producing it out, or build an entirely new factory line to handle the rest of the items that I'm going to need. So anyways, I built an entirely different factory line to handle the rest of the items I'm going to need. This side quest was the part of the build that I just was not looking forward to, since I needed to build a whole other aluminum production line and rubber production line as well. But it was worth it though, since I was able to prep these other various items that I'm going to need later down in the build. Spoiler alert, But I guess we're the triangle factory now, as I needed Fixite trigons for the Ficsonium. Who would have guessed, eh? I then set up these drones to deliver this stuff over the rocky desert using packaged fuel ripped from the Gold Coast oil nodes. With all 4 components ready, their powers combined create even more radiation. We got ourselves 1 plutonium fuel rod per minute, which is somehow a better output than my fantasy football team, which have been hot dog shit during the week when I wrote this script. The 1 fuel rod per minute still powers another 10 nuclear power plants. But plutonium fuel rods are interesting, since you can sink them. This leads to 3 paths as to what you can do going forward. Sinking plutonium fuel rods completely ends its production cycle, and you no longer need to bother with dealing with more waste products. It's now a closed loop, but you give up on that power boost. You can of course use those fuel rods for the power plant, which gives you another fat power boost, but now you gotta deal with more plutonium waste. And so this leaves you with another 2 choices. Stash the waste away in another giant waste storage facility, or take one last step to automate Ficsonium fuel rods. The game does give you a break though, as each nuclear power plant produces much less plutonium waste than uranium waste. If you go with the sink strategy or the storage route, those are both valid strats. But for me, I want to go even further beyond. Automating Ficsonium is like a leaf span dating a half span. It's complicated. The 3 inputs are some absurd endgame components. We already ran through the ringer to get us that plutonium waste, but it's the singularity cells and the dark matter residue is where the fun truly begins. I fly in reanimated SAM from the side quest factory to turn that into dark matter residue. I had to really reach into my production lines to pull up more raw SAM, as this stuff yields worse than a job hunter looking for interviews in today's job market. Singularity cells is where I needed to make a call. Since I no longer need to produce ballistic warp drives, I just rerouted those components from my endgame factory to my brutalist factory. This got me jumping around the game map, but good thing I built these handy portals.
What's the meaning of this?
Wait, what the fuck? I'd call 3 of these items into a particle accelerator and out comes the finest light fixture from the 2025 IKEA catalog. At this point, I combine it with the final 3 components and a couple of quantum encoders, the last set of electromagnetic control rods, a shit ton of Fixit trigons, and fresh, excited photonic matter straight from the converter farms. And with that, we are finally done automating 5 Ficsonium fuel rods per minute, the final component of this build. Oh, and don't forget to vent out that dark matter residue. Only a dumbass will forget to vent it out, right? And so finally, we finish a satisfactory build with 5 more nuclear power plants. Well, 4 here and 5th tossed off to the side since I fucking somehow forgot to build it. The beauty of Ficsonium is that it burns without any waste byproduct. A full system from the uranium to Ficsonium will completely remove waste from your system. Now, is the final Ficsonium step worth the effort and extra boost to power production? It's not really about the power production. It's about the journey and the bragging rights. The Ficsonium really does not power my factories. It powers my massive ego. Thank you once again for watching. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and as for me, I'm starting a new batch of short-form Satisfactory vlogs on a new playthrough, so be sure to check them out.